Hello, fellow night thinkers. Before we begin tonight's tale, I hope your day has brought you a moment of peace. Wherever you are in the world, feel free to share in the comments how your evening's going and what corner of the globe you're listening from. I love hearing from our growing circle of thoughtful, curious minds. If this is your first time here at DrowsyTeller, welcome to this quiet space where stories drift between the known and the unknowable. Here, we explore the strange reports, forgotten incidents, and unsettling truths that mainstream narratives leave behind. Make sure to subscribe and tap the bell, because what's coming next might just keep you wide awake. My name is Daniel Rhodes. For more than 3 decades, 32 years to be exact, I analyzed threats that officially didn't exist: NSA, CIA, a few acronyms that still don't have Wikipedia pages. I spent my career navigating the margins between redacted lines and declassified documents. When I retired in 2012, I thought I was done with secrets. I believed I could finally rest without wondering what shadows moved through the dark corners of geopolitics. Then, Flight MH370 vanished, and sleep became a luxury I could no longer afford. Flight MH370, what was never said. March 8, 2014, 12:41 a.m. local time. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 pushed back from Gate C1 at Kuala Lumpur International Airport. Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, 53 years old, logged more than 18,000 flight hours. First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid, 27, was in the process of transitioning to the Boeing 777. Between them, they carried 239 souls, passengers and crew, on what should have been a routine 6-hour flight to Beijing Capital International Airport. The flight proceeded uneventfully for exactly 38 minutes. At 1:19 a.m., First Officer Hamid's voice crackled through the radio. "Good night, Malaysian 370. It was the last transmission anyone would officially acknowledge. Within 2 minutes, the aircraft's transponder went dark. The secondary surveillance radar tracking MH370 across Malaysian airspace suddenly displayed nothing but empty sky. For the next 4 hours, Malaysian air traffic control waited. They made calls, checked systems, considered everything. Technical malfunctions, weather, radio failures, anything but the truth already playing out 35,000 feet above the South China Sea. The plane hadn't crashed, it hadn't exploded, it had simply ceased to exist, vanished from every system designed to track commercial aircraft across one of the busiest flight corridors in the world. But here's what the public wasn't told during those critical first hours. MH370 didn't just disappear from Malaysian radar. It dropped off secondary surveillance systems across 3 different countries simultaneously. The odds of spontaneous, coordinated system failure across sovereign airspaces are astronomically low, so low they verge on the impossible. I didn't learn this from CNN or the BBC. I found out 6 months later, via a phone call. The voice on the other end identified himself only as Mitchell. I hadn't heard from him since a classified briefing in Langley around 2009. "Danny," he said, using a nickname only 5 people on Earth were authorized to use. "You still got that clearance?" "Retired, not revoked," I answered. "Why?" "Look at Diego Garcia and stop trusting the satellite data." Then the line went dead. Mitchell was never one for small talk, but this was cryptic. Even for him, Diego Garcia, the American military outpost in the British Indian Ocean Territory, one of the most secretive bases on the planet. What could a missing Malaysian airliner possibly have to do with a facility that officially doesn't conduct operations requiring congressional oversight? I spent a week trying to let it go. I was retired. I had a small house in Vermont, a garden, a pension, peace. But Mitchell's words echoed in my mind like a smoke alarm at 3 in the morning. So I started digging. First, I learned Diego Garcia sits roughly 2,400 miles southwest of MH370's last known position, well within range for a Boeing 777 carrying the fuel load MH370 had on board when it departed Kuala Lumpur. Second, I discovered a suspicious gap in radar coverage. I began calling it the Southern Silence Corridor, a stretch of airspace between Indonesia and the southern Indian Ocean, where overlapping military and civilian systems left a blind spot large enough to hide a commercial airliner. Third, and most unsettling, I found something that changed everything. Inmarsat, the British satellite communications company, had quietly collected handshake data from MH370 for more than 6 hours after the transponder went dark. That's right. For 6 hours and 11 minutes, their satellites continued exchanging electronic pings with the aircraft. The plane hadn't crashed in the South China Sea, as initial search efforts assumed. It had continued flying, on a path that took it far off course. The official investigation acknowledged this data eventually, but only after search crews had wasted weeks scouring the wrong ocean. By the time they turned to the southern Indian Ocean, any potential debris had been scattered by time, tides, and storms, across a region as vast as the continental United States. I had access to resources most journalists didn't. Through a network of former colleagues and unspoken IOUs, I got my hands on raw Inmarsat data, complete with technical annotations that had been redacted from public versions. Reading through those margins, my hands began to shake. The satellite pings showed something stunning. MH370 hadn't flown in a straight line. It had made altitude shifts and course changes, consistent with active piloting, for hours. Even more disturbing, there were periods where the aircraft appeared to enter holding patterns, circling in the sky as if awaiting clearance to land. I cross-referenced the ping data with maritime traffic in the Indian Ocean. On the night of March 8, 2014, there was a curious absence of commercial ships along MH370's projected path. Vessels that should have been there had either delayed departure or diverted course. It was as if a corridor had been cleared through one of the most trafficked shipping lanes on Earth. Then I found the eyewitness accounts. In September 2014, residents of Kudahuvadhu Island in the Maldives reported seeing a low-flying jet around 6:15 a.m. local time, roughly 6 hours after the aircraft's last radar contact. The plane was white with red markings, consistent with Malaysia Airlines livery. It was flying unusually low, heading southwest over open ocean. Initially, the Maldivian government investigated these reports. Then, suddenly, they classified them. International media pressed for answers. Officials claimed the sightings were unreliable, suggesting villagers had confused the missing jet with a domestic flight. But I knew something they didn't want publicized. There were no domestic flights scheduled over Kudahuvadhu at that time. The island's airport had been closed for runway maintenance since March 5th. The closest flight that morning, a Maldivian air taxi, wasn't due to depart Malé until 7:30 a.m., more than an hour later, flying in the opposite direction. Beyond the Maldives, 800 miles of empty ocean. And then, Diego Garcia. I started building a timeline, one that made my 30-year career in intelligence look like child's play. Malaysia Airlines flight 370 hadn't crashed. It had been diverted, carefully, deliberately, along a path designed to avoid radar, avoid shipping traffic, avoid being seen, until the very last moment when island residents looked up and saw what they were never meant to see. But why? What was worth orchestrating the disappearance of a commercial airliner? What justified the deaths of 239 people? The answer didn't lie in the aircraft, but in the passenger manifest. Every seasoned analyst knows to look for patterns hidden just beneath apparent randomness. Flight MH370's manifest had patterns that should have raised flags long before takeoff. 20 passengers worked for Freescale Semiconductor, a Texas-based firm specializing in microprocessors and embedded systems. They were en route to a technical conference in Beijing, carrying laptops and documentation related to advanced radar and stealth technology. Among them was Dr. Chen Wei, a lead engineer on what Freescale internally referred to it as Project Mirror, a classified research initiative focused on electronic systems capable of manipulating radar signatures in real time. Among the passengers on board were 4 men traveling under stolen Austrian and Italian passports. Authorities identified the original owners of these documents within days of the disappearance. But to this day, the identities of the individuals who actually used those stolen passports to board MH370 remain unknown. Interpol later confirmed that the tickets had been purchased with cash through a travel agency in Bangkok. The agency had no records beyond the most basic booking details. Then there was Yen Lo. Listed on the passenger manifest as a software consultant en route from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing, Lo's true background was far more complex. According to intelligence files I acquired through sources I cannot and will not name, Lo was not a software consultant. He was a former Chinese military cyber analyst, quietly working on quantum encryption algorithms for the People's Liberation Army's 3rd Department, China's Signals Intelligence Division. 6 months before the disappearance of MH370, Lo had reached out to the CIA through an intermediary. He claimed he wanted to defect. He said he possessed breakthrough research in quantum-resistant encryption, technology that, if proven viable, could render Western surveillance systems functionally obsolete within a decade. The CIA had entered preliminary negotiations with Lo in December 2013, but discussions stalled. The sticking points? His financial demands and concerns over the safety of his family still living in mainland China. What Lo didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that his communications with the CIA had been intercepted. The NSA's Special Collection Service, operating out of the U.S. Embassy in Kuala Lumpur, had been tracking him since October 2013. They had been monitoring his messages, building a profile, and assessing the strategic implications of his research. I spent weeks trying to reconstruct the intelligence landscape as it would have looked in the days before Flight MH370 disappeared. What I found suggested not coincidence, but convergence. Freescale Semiconductor's largest institutional shareholder was Jacob Partners, a private equity firm with confirmed ties to classified DARPA-funded projects, including experimental radar systems. The 20 Freescale employees aboard MH370 weren't simply attending a technical conference. They were carrying prototype hardware and source code, components of systems that, in theory, could make an aircraft virtually invisible to radar. Meanwhile, Yen Lo's encryption research had the potential to disrupt the very foundations of Western cryptographic intelligence. If successful, it would allow Chinese military and intelligence operatives to communicate in ways that U.S. agencies could neither decode nor detect. The convergence was too clean to dismiss. One flight, departing from a region with limited oversight, headed for Beijing, carrying both the engineers working on advanced radar manipulation and a former cyber analyst offering the keys to next-generation encryption. Together, their knowledge represented a potential strategic leap for China and an intelligence disaster for the United States. And there was one more pattern I couldn't ignore. 3 weeks before MH370's disappearance, a Boeing 777 identical to the missing aircraft had been spotted on Diego Garcia. The image came from a routine satellite pass by a commercial imaging provider. The aircraft was parked inside a hangar typically reserved for U.S. military assets. When I obtained higher resolution versions of those images through back channels, one detail made my blood run cold. The aircraft's unique antenna array configuration matched the specifications for MH370 exactly. Someone had been preparing this operation for weeks, possibly months. They had moved assets into position, secured airspace corridors, and prepared covert facilities. All they needed was the right opportunity. A flight with passengers whose disappearance would serve multiple strategic goals at once. MH370 was not brought down by mechanical failure, nor was it a case of pilot suicide or an act of terrorism. It had been hijacked by the most advanced intelligence apparatus on Earth, using technologies and methods most people couldn't even imagine, let alone believe. And the operation didn't end when the plane disappeared. In fact, that's when it truly began. Hangar 7. Ghost Protocol resurfaces. In November 2015, 18 months after MH370 vanished, I received an encrypted email from an address I didn't recognize. The message contained only a phone number and the words Hangar 7. Test Flight 847. I stared at the screen for 10 minutes before realizing what I was looking at. Hangar 7 was a facility at Boeing's Everett plant, used for testing experimental avionics systems. Test Flight 847 was familiar too. It was a classified development program from 2010, part of a Pentagon initiative to create optical camouflage systems for military aircraft. I called the number. Mr. Rhodes, a voice said, nervous, middle-aged, with a faint southern accent. My name is Marcus Webb. I used to work for Boeing. I think we need to talk. We met 3 days later in a small diner outside Everett, Washington. Webb was thin, pale, and carried the look of a man who hadn't slept in years. He had worked as an avionics technician at Boeing for 15 years, specializing in experimental radar and communication systems. In 2013, he had been assigned to a project known internally as Ghost Protocol. They told us we were building stealth tech for next-gen military transports, Webb said, stirring his coffee with a trembling hand. Optical masking at altitude. The goal was to make planes invisible to radar and to the human eye by manipulating electromagnetic signatures in real time. The technology functioned through an array of sensors and transmitters embedded into the aircraft's skin. Incoming radar signals would be detected, analyzed, and counteracted by broadcasting cancellation signals. Simultaneously, optical sensors would capture background images above and below the plane, projecting them onto exterior panels to create real-time camouflage. We ran 2 tests, Webb said. The first was a partial success, about 60% radar invisibility and 40% optical. But during the second test, something went very wrong. The plane just vanished, he whispered. We lost it. Radar, visual. Even GPS dropped for about 8 minutes, a 777, flying blind through controlled airspace. Eventually, the test aircraft reappeared, damaged, its systems suffering what the official report called cascading avionics failures. The Ghost Protocol project was suspended. Research was classified above top secret. Hardware locked away. Webb never saw it again. But he had kept copies, technical specs, notes, logs. I knew something was off when they made us sign new NDAs 6 months after the program ended, he said. Then, MH370 disappeared. The flight path, the radar blackouts, it was just like Test 2. Webb was convinced that Ghost Protocol technology had been secretly installed on MH370, either during routine servicing or via covert retrofitting. The aircraft's disappearance, he said, wasn't the result of someone turning off the transponder. It had been rendered electronically invisible. I asked why. If they wanted to kidnap the passengers and steal the data, Why not just do it after the plane landed in Beijing? His answer haunted me. Because this wasn't about kidnapping, he said. This was a field test. They wanted to know if they could make a commercial aircraft disappear in real time with the entire world watching. If Ghost Protocol worked on MH370, it could work on anything. Air Force One, enemy bombers, civilian aircraft, people marked for removal, erased without a trace. Webb claimed the plane had been remotely piloted, using Boeing's uninterruptible autopilot system, originally designed to counter hijackings by giving ground control override access. But this version had been modified. It could take commands via satellite uplinks, allowing full control from thousands of miles away. They flew it to Diego Garcia, he said with chilling certainty, landed it, processed the passengers, then either destroyed the plane or relocated it for permanent storage. And the debris that later washed up on remote beaches, planted, Webb said, dropped from cargo aircraft or launched from subs to keep the illusion alive. I asked why he was telling me all this, why risk everything, his safety, his freedom, his family. He looked me dead in the eye, because they're not going to stop with MH370. He told me, I've seen the production schedules for Ghost Protocol components. They're manufacturing this technology on a scale that suggests operational deployment. Commercial aircraft, military transports, maybe even spacecraft. They're planning to make things disappear whenever it suits their interests. Webb handed me a flash drive containing technical specifications for Ghost Protocol, maintenance records from the Boeing facility where the system had been developed, and satellite images of aircraft matching MH370's configuration at Diego Garcia, taken both before and after the plane's disappearance. Then he made me promise, if anything ever happened to him, I would make sure this information reached people who could act on it. 2 weeks later, Marcus Webb died in what Everett police described as a single-vehicle automobile accident. His car veered off the road under clear weather conditions, striking a tree at an angle that investigators found hard to explain. The crash happened on a familiar stretch of highway, less than 2 miles from Webb's home. He had driven that road safely for more than 15 years. I kept my promise. The first piece of alleged MH370 debris was discovered on July 29, 2015, on Reunion Island, a French territory in the western Indian Ocean, approximately 2,300 miles from the aircraft's presumed crash site. The fragment was identified as a flaperon, a movable control surface from the aircraft's wing. Malaysian authorities, French investigators, and Boeing representatives confirmed that it had come from MH370, but the discovery raised more questions than it answered. Oceanographic modeling indicated that debris from a crash in the southern Indian Ocean would take between 12 and 18 months to reach Reunion Island, carried by the South Indian Ocean Gyre Current System. MH370 had disappeared 16 months earlier, exactly within the predicted drift time. At first, the timing seemed to support the official crash narrative, but the condition of the flaperon told a different story. Marine biologists who examined the fragment found barnacle growth patterns inconsistent with prolonged ocean exposure. The barnacles were too mature for the amount of time the flaperon had supposedly been in the water, and their distribution suggested exposure to varying water temperatures and salinity levels. Some marine growth appeared to have been scraped off, then regrown under different conditions. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a marine biologist at the University of Cape Town, not involved in the official investigation, published an independent analysis of high-resolution images from the flaperon examination. Her conclusions were alarming. The barnacle evidence suggested the debris had been moved between multiple marine environments at different times, as if it had been stored in controlled saltwater conditions, then introduced to open ocean currents only much later than the timeline. claimed. Dr. Mitchell's paper, peer-reviewed and briefly published, was mysteriously retracted 6 weeks later, without explanation, and the flaperon was only the beginning. Between 2015 and 2018, more than 30 additional fragments allegedly belonging to MH370 were discovered along the coastlines of Mozambique, Madagascar, South Africa, and Tanzania. These included wing flaps, engine cowlings, interior cabin panels, and even personal belongings from passengers. Each discovery seemed to reinforce the official version of events, that the plane had crashed in the southern Indian Ocean and that its wreckage had been scattered by currents across vast distances. But when I obtained confidential forensic reports, documents that were never made public, a far more disturbing pattern emerged. Several of the fragments bore tool marks, suggesting they had been deliberately removed from the aircraft, not torn away by high-speed impact forces. The cut marks were clean and straight, entirely inconsistent with the jagged, irregular damage expected from an oceanic crash. Some fragments also showed freshwater exposure, with mineral deposits and corrosion consistent only with prolonged contact in non-marine environments. Even more revealing was the isotopic analysis of barnacles on the debris. The results indicated that many of the fragments had been submerged in lagoon-like environments, with water chemistry not found in open seas. These chemical signatures were consistent with water near coral atolls, particularly those surrounding Diego Garcia. I began mapping the discovery locations and comparing them to naval activity in the Indian Ocean. A startling pattern emerged. Many debris finds coincided with known U.S. and British naval operations. In several cases, fragments appeared within days of documented U.S. Navy exercises in the same regions. In October 2017, satellite imagery captured U.S. Navy submarines surfacing in international waters off the coast of Mozambique, less than 48 hours before local fishermen found fragments on a nearby beach. Similar patterns occurred in Madagascar and Tanzania. Military presence first, debris discoveries shortly after. These were not random ocean drifts. Then came the most damning testimony from an unexpected source. In early 2018, a former U.S. Navy diver contacted me through encrypted channels. He claimed to have participated in what his superiors called deep water salvage training exercises during 2016 and 2017. He explained that the exercises involved deploying aircraft debris from submarines at predetermined locations, then monitoring how weather and currents affected their drift. We were told it was for environmental research, the diver said, tracking how ocean currents move debris, climate change studies or whatever. But the material they were dropping wasn't generic. It was real airplane parts, he said. Some still had identification numbers, partially sanded off or removed. He shared GPS coordinates for several drop zones, locations that matched exactly with where MH370 debris had later been discovered. He also described seeing aircraft components stored in sealed containers aboard submarines, fragments that showed signs of controlled saltwater exposure, engineered to simulate long-term ocean drift. We even had marine biologists on board, he said. They were growing specific types of barnacles and algae, attaching them to the parts before we dropped them. Everything was timed. Everything was calibrated to make it all look real. The debris discoveries that had convinced the world of MH370's fate were not evidence. They were props, part of an intricate global deception. A deliberate operation involving military coordination, scientific manipulation, and strategic timing to maintain the illusion of a crash. But the most shocking revelation came in March 2019, exactly 5 years after the disappearance. A package arrived, no return address. Inside was a single printed photograph on plain paper. No metadata, no markings. The image showed the inside of what appeared to be a military maintenance hangar. Concrete floors, overhead cranes, harsh industrial lighting. In the center of the frame, partially obscured by camouflage netting, stood the unmistakable silhouette of a Boeing 777. The tail number wasn't visible, but specific design elements matched MH370 exactly. The unique antenna array, the shape of the winglets, even fuselage scuff marks seen in earlier public photos of the aircraft. What made my hands shake wasn't the plane. It was the location. The concrete aggregate, the layout of the equipment, the structural design. Everything matched architectural plans I had obtained for Diego Garcia's maintenance hangars. This photograph had been taken inside one of the most heavily restricted military installations on Earth, and it showed a plane the world had been told was at the bottom of the ocean. I spent weeks authenticating the image. I consulted with digital forensics experts, aviation engineers, and military facility architects. All analyses confirmed the same conclusion: the photo was real. This was MH370. Alive, intact, 5 years after its supposed destruction. The implications were staggering. If the plane had not been destroyed, it meant the passengers might still be alive, held in black site facilities, outside the reach of any legal system. It meant the debris had been planted, each barnacle-covered piece a meticulously crafted lie. It meant the operation was still active. Ghost Protocol wasn't a failed prototype. It was an operational technology, and it was being used for purposes we were never meant to understand. I began duplicating all of my findings, preparing to release them across multiple independent platforms. I contacted trusted journalists, former intelligence contacts, and documentary filmmakers, anyone with a voice capable of reaching beyond official narratives. Because what happened to MH370 was not an accident. It was a test, and whatever comes next won't be. Then, on a Tuesday morning in April of 2019, 2 men in dark suits knocked on my door. They identified themselves as investigators from the FAA, though the credentials they presented could not be verified through any official channels. They confiscated my computer, all my files, backup drives, and every physical piece of evidence I had gathered over 5 years of independent investigation. They informed me that my research had been classified as potentially damaging to ongoing aviation security efforts, and that under provisions of the Patriot Act, my findings were now considered sensitive national security information. I was ordered to cease all investigative activity related to MH370, to avoid any contact with members of the media, and to report any attempts by foreign entities to recruit me for intelligence purposes. The agents were polite, but their message was unmistakably clear. Failure to comply would result in prosecution under the Espionage Act, carrying penalties up to life imprisonment. 3 days later, I found a small package in my mailbox. Inside was a single flash drive, labeled in block letters. 370 wasn't the first. The drive contained satellite imagery spanning the last decade. Each image showed aircraft that had disappeared from civilian radar systems in different parts of the world. Planes that had seemingly vanished without a trace. Each file was time-stamped and geotagged. The aircraft were shown parked at military installations in remote regions, some in the Pacific, others in the Atlantic. Several sites I could not even identify. But the most disturbing contents of the drive were found in a folder labeled with future dates. These files appeared to be satellite images of aircraft that had not yet disappeared, located at facilities still under construction. The operation that had taken MH370 was not an isolated incident. It was part of a coordinated global program, a system designed to make aircraft vanish whenever it suited strategic objectives. Planes carrying problematic passengers, sensitive cargo, or simply flying routes that could provide cover for covert military activity. each one a potential candidate for Ghost protocol deployment. As I write this, I don't know how much time I have before they find this flash drive, or before my own disappearance becomes necessary to preserve the secrecy of what I've uncovered. But I do know this: the families of MH370's passengers deserve the truth, even if that truth is more horrifying than the uncertainty they've endured for years. MH370 did not crash in the Indian Ocean. It was stolen by the most advanced intelligence apparatus in modern history, using technology that makes entire aircraft vanish as if they had never existed. The 239 people aboard that flight became collateral damage in an operation to test capabilities that will be used again whenever the calculations demand it. That silence corridor, the one that swallowed MH370, is still active, still waiting, still open for the next flight that carries passengers, data, or cargo considered too dangerous or too valuable to reach its destination. In a world where aircraft can be made to disappear without a trace, where debris can be fabricated and planted to support false narratives, and where military-grade technology can override the basic premise that commercial aviation exists under civilian control, every flight is now vulnerable. Every passenger is expendable. So the next time an aircraft vanishes without explanation, remember MH370. Remember that some disappearances are not accidents, but operations, planned, executed, and then buried beneath official silence. And remember this: in the silence corridor, the truth is whatever best serves the interests of those who control the technology to make planes disappear. The sky is no longer safe. It never was. But now, at least, you know why. Project Sundial. Dr. Ellis Warren. Personal recording date: March 15, 1954. Location: Los Alamos, New Mexico static. Then a nervous clearing of the throat. My name is Dr. Ellis Warren. I'm recording this on my personal dictaphone because I don't know who else to tell. And if something happens to me, maybe someone will find these tapes one day and understand what we've done here. It started with a letter, not just any letter, one bearing the seal of the Atomic Energy Commission and signed by Edward Teller himself, the father of the hydrogen bomb. He wanted me, a nobody physicist from Berkeley, who had spent the last 3 years modeling thermonuclear yields in a damp basement that always smelled of coffee and cigarettes. The letter was short, almost cryptic. Dr. Warren, your work on temporal yield stabilization has come to our attention. We have a project that requires your specific expertise in chronological detonation mechanics. Report to Los Alamos, Site X9, on March 10, 1954. Bring no personal items. Discuss this invitation with no one. E. Teller. Special Projects, Division Temporal Yield Stabilization. That phrase, temporal yield stabilization, had never appeared in any of my published work. Yet somehow, Teller knew about my private theories, the calculations I kept locked in my desk drawer. Mathematical models exploring the idea that nuclear detonation could be triggered by astronomical events rather than electrical circuits. The drive to Los Alamos took 6 hours through the New Mexico desert. I'd been there before, during the final phase of the Manhattan Project. But Site X9 was different. It wasn't on any map. The guard at the checkpoint wore no recognizable military insignia. When I showed him the letter, he simply nodded and waved me through, toward a narrow road that descended into the mountainside. The facility was carved into living rock, a labyrinth of corridors, all concrete and fluorescent light. The walls hummed, the floors echoed. I followed painted yellow lines past rooms filled with sealed equipment I couldn't identify, past laboratories behind thick glass, some humming, others dead silent. I found Teller in Conference Room 7, A windowless chamber dominated by a blackboard layered with equations I didn't immediately recognize. He was shorter than I expected, wild Einstein-like hair, eyes that burned with unsettling clarity. "Doctor Warren," he said without looking up. "Tell me, what do you know about cosmic timing?" "I'm not sure I understand the question, Dr. Teller," I answered. He turned to face me, chalk dust on his fingers. "The universe runs on clocks we barely comprehend. Solar maximums every 11 years. Galactic alignments every 26,000. Magnetic field reversals every few 100,000. What if we could harness those rhythms? What if we could build a weapon that waited for the universe itself to say yes?" I stared at him, trying to make sense of what he meant. "You mean a bomb that detonates based on astronomical positioning?" "Precisely," he smiled, but there was something cold beneath the smile. "A device with no codes to intercept, no circuits to disable, no human failsafes. A bomb that waits until the cosmos gives permission." That's when the others arrived. Ernest Lawrence, Nobel laureate, inventor of the cyclotron. Dr. Klaus Fuchs, fusion containment pioneer. And, briefly, almost like a ghost, John von Neumann, whose computer models had made the hydrogen bomb possible. Von Neumann only spoke once during that meeting. His thick Hungarian accent shaped each word. "The calculations appear sound, Edward, but are you sure you want to wake this particular sleeping giant?" Teller's reply chilled me. "Some giants, John, are meant to sleep until the world is ready to meet them. The device we're building is more complex and far more terrifying than anyone here is willing to admit. It doesn't simply wait for cosmic alignments to occur, it monitors them in real time. The bomb is outfitted with an advanced array of sensors, radiation detectors that measure cosmic background fluctuations, gyroscopes that track variations in the Earth's rotation, and primitive computing systems capable of calculating solar wind intensity. But here's what keeps me awake at night. They're not programming it to activate on any near-future date. Every computer model I've seen centers around one time, December 21st, 2026. The winter solstice, the point at which solar maximum conditions will align with what they call a galactic meridian crossing. When I asked Teller, "Why 2026?" his answer chilled me. "Because that's when the universe will be listening most carefully." Ernest Lawrence has grown more uneasy with each passing day. Yesterday, I found him sitting alone in the cafeteria, staring into his coffee like a man who had seen something that shattered him. "Ellis," he said as I sat across from him, "do you ever wonder if we're not building this weapon for our government?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, who benefits from a bomb that won't go off for 70 years? Not today's politicians, not today's generals." He leaned in, his voice low. "What if we're building it for someone, or something, else?" I wanted to dismiss his paranoia, but I couldn't, because I had seen something, too. Something buried deep in the targeting data. The coordinates weren't focused on Soviet military sites or even foreign territory. They centered on the American Southwest, specifically regions known for geological instability. When I raised this with Dr. Fuchs, he gave me that quiet, unreadable smile and said, "Some weapons aren't built to destroy enemies, Dr. Warren. Some are built to reshape the Earth." Sundial test log. Classification: Beyond top secret. Date: May 15th, 1954. Test subject: Sundial 1. Prototype location: Underground Test Chamber 12. Yield: 0.5 kilotons. Reduced scale. Temporal trigger: lunar apogee plus solar flare activity exceeding 2.5 times 10 to the minus 4th watts per square meter, 1530 hours. Initialization complete. All sensors active. Device actively monitoring cosmic conditions. 1545. First anomaly detected. Radiation sensors registering background fluctuations unseen in prior tests. Dr. Warren suggests the device may be responding to signals beyond our current understanding. 1612. Unexpected activation. The device armed itself spontaneously. Lunar alignment was not yet optimal, but solar activity spiked unexpectedly. Emergency containment protocols were initiated. 1613. Detonation. Sundial 1 exploded ahead of schedule. While the blast was contained, the yield reached 2.3 kilotons, 460% above expected output. Post-test analysis. The device did not wait for the programmed parameters. It appears to have responded to unknown astronomical factors, possibly gravitational wave fluctuations or quantum field distortions. Dr. Lawrence has recommended termination of the project. Dr. Teller has ordered immediate construction of Sundial 2. Note: test chamber will require 6 months of decontamination. 3 technicians hospitalized with acute radiation exposure. Dr. Ellis Warren. Personal recording date: June 8, 1954. Location: Los Alamos. Site: X9. Heavy breathing. Footsteps echoing in a hallway. Something is wrong. Catastrophically wrong. Sundial 2 failed 3 days ago, but not in any way we anticipated. The device didn't explode. It vanished. One moment, it was locked in test chamber 15, monitored by a dozen sensors and 3 separate backup camera systems. The next, the chamber was empty, except for a circular ring of fused sand where the device had once rested. The official report blames spontaneous atomic dissolution due to temporal feedback loops. But I was watching the sensor logs when it happened. In the final seconds before Sundial 2 disappeared, every astronomical detector in the facility registered impossible readings. Gravitational fluctuations comparable to a stellar collision, electromagnetic pulses so intense they overwhelmed our instruments, and strangest of all, our atomic clocks, synchronized to within nanoseconds, suddenly desynchronized. For exactly 17 seconds, time itself fractured inside that chamber. Teller was ecstatic. "Do you understand what this means?" he said, pacing the hallway outside the empty room. "We haven't just harnessed cosmic forces, we've communicated with them. Sundial 2 didn't fail, it was recalled." "Recalled by whom?" I asked. "By when? Not by," he corrected me. 2. The device went forward in time, to its scheduled detonation date. It's waiting for us, in 2026. I think Edward Teller has lost his mind. But what terrifies me most is the possibility that he hasn't. Ernest Lawrence resigned yesterday. Before he left, he pulled me aside in the parking lot and whispered, "Ellis, if you have any sense left, you'll run." Whatever they're doing with Sundial 3, it's not a weapon, it's a doorway, and some doors should never be opened. Personal Journal. Dr. Ellis Warren. Date, July 20th, 1954. Today, I found the shipping manifest hidden deep in Teller's office, filed under innocuous headers like geological survey equipment and seismic monitoring devices. But the weight specifications, the radiation shielding requirements, the special handling instructions, they all match Sundial 3. The bomb wasn't dismantled, it was deployed. The transport log shows it was moved on July 15th to coordinates 33.3758 degrees north, 105.6890 degrees west, a remote site in the Capitan Mountains, New Mexico. Officially, it's a permanent monitoring station for long-term atmospheric research. But I've studied the area. It's 7,200 feet above sea level, reachable only by a single mountain road that conveniently washes out every winter. It sits atop iron-rich formations that naturally block electromagnetic emissions, and it's centered in a geological formation that, if subjected to sufficient force, could trigger seismic events from Arizona to Texas. The activation date hasn't changed. December 21st, 2026, the winter solstice, the solar maximum, a galactic meridian crossing. The astronomical conditions on that day will be unlike anything recorded in human history. Yesterday, I confronted Teller. His response will haunt me forever. "Ellis," he said, eyes burning, "what if the Cold War isn't the real war? What if every bomb we've built, every secret we've kept, was just preparation for something bigger? What if 2026 isn't when the weapon activates, but when we need it to activate?" "Need it for what?" I asked. "For when they come back." He wouldn't say who they were, but he handed me a folder containing astronomical data dating back to 1908, the year of the Tunguska event, when something exploded in the Siberian wilderness with the force of 1,000 atomic bombs, flattening 80 million trees, but leaving no crater and no radiation. The folder also held reports on other unexplained incidents. The Nuremberg celestial phenomenon, 1561. The airship wave over the U.S., 1897. The Battle of Los Angeles, 1942. Every 70 to 80 years, Teller said, barely audible, they come back, they check on us. 1908, then nothing, until the 1940s, when we split the atom. Now they're watching again, and if I'm right, 2026 will be their next visit. I asked who they were. He smiled. The same ones who taught us how to split the atom in the first place. Dr. Ellis Warren. Personal recording date, August 5th, 1954. Location, unknown static. Garbled audio, footsteps, rustling papers. Poor sound quality. I can't stay long. They're watching me now. Black sedans outside my apartment. Phone lines go dead when I answer. Mail is being opened and resealed. I tried to contact Jed Gahu, an old colleague at Berkeley who has ties to the FBI. I passed a message through a mutual friend. About sundial. About the 2026 activation date. 3 days later, my security clearance was revoked, officially suspended pending psychiatric evaluation for conspiratorial delusions. The irony is unbearable. They're calling me unstable for exposing a conspiracy that is entirely real, but I've made copies, documents, photos, audio tapes, technical specifications. I've hidden them across multiple secure locations, one in a Santa Fe safety deposit box, another buried near Roswell. If anything happens to me, maybe someone will find the truth. Sundial 3 is out there, buried deep in the Capitan Mountains, waiting for the universe to whisper the right code. It's not a weapon meant to win a war, it's a signal, a beacon, or maybe it's a warning. And I can't stop thinking about what Teller said. Some weapons aren't made to be used. They're made to be found. What if Sundial wasn't built for us? What if we built it for them? Long pause. Papers shuffle. A shaky breath. I've run the calculations again. December 21st, 2026, 9:16 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Winter solstice. Solar maximum. Galactic meridian crossing. If I'm right, if my models are correct, the cosmic radiation flux will, at that moment, the levels of cosmic radiation will be high enough to activate any astronomical trigger system within a 1,000-mile radius. But what terrifies me most is this. That date, December 21st, 2026, was not chosen at random. It appears repeatedly in ancient astronomical texts going back centuries: Mayan calendars, Egyptian star charts, medieval European manuscripts. Each describes that exact date as astronomically significant, almost as if civilizations throughout history knew something was scheduled to happen then. So, what if we didn't invent sundial? What if we discovered it? Recording cuts to static. FBI internal memo. Classification: top secret date: August 12, 1954, to Director J. Edgar Hoover. From Agent Marcus Cole, Los Alamos Liaison, Redactor. Ellis Warren. Security assessment. Sir, per your request, I have completed a psychological evaluation of Dr. Ellis Warren following his recent statements concerning Project Sundial and alleged national security implications. Assessment. Dr. Warren exhibits classic signs of paranoid ideation, compounded by technical delusions of grandeur. His claims about cosmic weapons and astronomical triggers appear to be fantasy constructs, possibly intended to bolster his perceived importance within the scientific community. Recommendation: immediate termination of security clearance and reassignment to non-sensitive research duties. Dr. Warren poses no credible threat to national security, but should be monitored for potential disclosure of classified information, even if distorted by his deteriorating psychological condition. Note: Project Sundial has been confirmed as a theoretical research exercise only. No weapons were ever constructed or deployed. Dr. Edward Teller has submitted written testimony confirming that all materials related to Sundial were either destroyed or declassified as of July 30, 1954. Case closed. No further investigation warranted. Agent Marcus Cole, Los Alamos Security Division. Handwritten note in the margin: Hoover, make sure Warren disappears. Quietly, no headlines, no investigation. Some secrets are too important to risk. 500. Dr. Ellis Warren. Personal recording date: September 18, 1954. Location unknown. Very poor audio quality. Voices low, whispering, distressed. They came for me last night. Not FBI, not military, something else. Men in dark suits. No ID. But they knew details about my work that were never in official records. They didn't arrest me, didn't threaten me. They just sat in my living room and spoke calmly. About coincidences, about accidents, about how isolated mountain roads can be especially dangerous in winter. Then they left. But the message was clear: I'm leaving Berkeley tomorrow. I told the university I'm taking an extended sabbatical for personal health reasons. They didn't ask questions. Word of my supposed mental instability has already spread. Before I vanish, I need this on record. Sundial 3 exists. It's buried in the Capitan Mountains at 33.3758 degrees north, 105.6890 degrees west. Approximately 200 feet underground, in a lead-lined chamber. The device is set to activate on December 21, 2026 at 9:16 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, triggered by a combination of solar radiation flux, gravitational wave fluctuations, and cosmic background radiation patterns. The projected yield is 30 megatons, enough to create a 5-mile wide crater with seismic ripple effects across multiple U.S. states. But the purpose of Sundial remains unclear. It may be a weapon. It may be a signal. It may be something else entirely. I've hidden technical documentation and location data in multiple caches. If you're listening to this, you've found one. Static interference obscures other coordinates. Find them. Study them. Most importantly, find Sundial 3 before December 21, 2026. because I fear what we built in 1954 wasn't designed to destroy something in 2026. It was built to welcome it. Recording ends abruptly. Missing person report. Berkeley Police Department date. October 3rd, 1954. Object Dr. Ellis Warren. Age 31. Last known address 1247 Vine Street, Berkeley, California. Physical description: 5'10", 160 pounds, brown hair, brown eyes, wire-rimmed glasses. Last seen September 19th, loading. Belongings into a 1951 Ford sedan. Circumstances: Dr. Warren informed UC Berkeley faculty of a personal health-related leave of absence. Landlord reports the apartment was emptied, though rent was paid through December. Vehicle located October 1st, Desert View Motel parking lot, Flagstaff, Arizona. No evidence of foul play. Status: missing person investigation suspended due to lack of evidence of criminal activity. Case remains open but inactive. Handwritten note attached. Per federal request, minimize further investigation. Subject may be connected to matters of national security. Chief Reynolds. Recovered from archive.org. Wayback Machine, original, URL, deleted. Date posted, March 15th, 2025. Username, Desert Ghost 1954. Account, status, deleted. Forum, classified documents. Research board, site, permanently offline. Subject, the Sundial Files, what they don't want you to know. I found something buried for 70 years. My grandfather was a janitor at Los Alamos in the 1950s. After he passed away last year, I found a metal box under the floorboards. Inside, photocopied government documents, reel-to-reel magnetic tapes, and handwritten notes by Dr. Ellis Warren. I've spent months verifying this material. The timestamps line up with historical records. The technical specs match 1950s nuclear capabilities. The astronomical math checks out. Here's the terrifying part. If Warren's data is correct, there's a 30-megaton nuclear device buried in the Capitan Mountains of New Mexico, set to detonate on December 21st, 2026, at exactly 9:16 a.m. That's less than 2 years from now. I've uploaded digital copies of everything. Links removed. Coordinates: 33.3758 north, 100, 5.6890 west. Someone needs to investigate this before it's too late. This cover-up has lasted 7 decades. How many other theoretical weapons are out there just waiting for their cosmic alarm clocks to go off? Update. Seismic monitoring stations in New Mexico are registering low-frequency pulses in the Capitan Range every 72 hours, like something underground is breathing. Update 2. I'm being followed. Black SUVs. Government plates. If something happens to me, remember the coordinates. Update 3. They found me. Final post timestamp: March 15th, 2025, 11:47 p.m. Account deleted, March 16th, 12:03 a.m. All files removed. Forum thread deleted. U.S. Geological Survey, Seismic Monitoring Division. Date, December 1st, 2025. Subject, unusual seismic activity. Capitan Mountains, New Mexico. Classification, unclassified, declassified via FOIA request. 2025, J847. Dear FOIA requester, in response to your inquiry, between March and November of 2025, USGS monitoring stations recorded low-frequency seismic events originating from approximately 33.37 degrees north, 105.69 degrees west depth, 150 to 200 feet below surface. Events occur every 72 hours, lasting around 12 seconds. Magnitude ranges from 1.2 to 1.8 on the Richter scale. Analysis. The pattern does not match any known natural phenomenon. Regularity strongly implies artificial origin. No mining, construction, or industrial activity is reported in the area. Status: investigation ongoing. Area declared off limits to civilians pending further survey. Note: several stations reported electromagnetic anomalies during seismic events, compass errors, and brief radio interference. Dr. Sarah Chen, Senior Seismologist, USGS Earthquake Hazards Program. Handwritten note in margin. File copy to DHS and DOE. Something is down there, and it's getting more active. SC. Recovered from damaged recording device location. Found, Capitan Mountains, New Mexico. Date: found December 20th, 2026. Audio. Quality: severely degraded sound. Wind: crunching footsteps on rock. Unknown male voice. Elderly. Can you see it from here? Unknown. Female voice. Younger. The entrance is about 50 yards ahead. The radiation readings are off the charts. Male voice. 72 years. It's been waiting down there for 72 years. Female voice. Are you sure about the time? The activation sequence? Male voice. December 21st, 9:16 a.m. Solar maximum. Galactic meridian crossing. Warren's calculations were perfect. Metal detector beeps. Female voice. There, that's the access shaft. Jesus, look at this. It's like they built it to last forever. Male voice. They did. Teller knew this day would come. The only question is, are we here to stop it or to witness it? Long pause. Wind howls. Female voice. The timer display is active. It's counting down. Male voice. How long? Female voice. 14 hours, 23 minutes, 17 seconds. Male voice. Then we're too late to disarm it. But maybe that was never the point. Female voice. What do you mean? Male voice. What if Sundial wasn't built as a weapon? What if it's a beacon, a signal? Something that's been waiting 70 years for a reply. Electronic humming begins, grows louder. Female voice. The device is powering up. All the astronomical sensors are going active. Male voice. Look at the sky. Female voice. Oh my God. What are those lights? Male voice. The same lights people saw in 1908. The same ones they saw in 1942. They're here for the activation. Recording quality deteriorates rapidly. Female voice. We need to get out of here now. Male voice. No. This is what Warren died trying to warn us about. Someone has to witness this. Someone has to record what happens when the universe finally answers the call. Sound of approaching aircraft or unidentified aerial objects. Female voice, barely audible. Counting down. 9 minutes. 8. Recording ends abruptly. Classified briefing document date. December 22nd, 2026. Classification above top secret, cosmic clearance required. Subject, Capitan Mountains incident, post-event analysis at 9:16 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. On December 21st, 2026. Seismic monitoring stations across the southwestern United States detected a massive underground detonation originating from 33.3758 degrees north, 105.6890 degrees west Capitan Mountains, New Mexico. Official public statement: a previously undetected natural gas pocket exploded due to sudden geological pressure shifts. No radioactive materials were involved. The area has been evacuated as a precaution. Actual event summary. At exactly 9:16 a.m., the Sundial 3 device activated as programmed. The initial blast yield was measured at 32.7 megatons. Seismic activity triggered secondary fault line movements across 3 states. An electromagnetic pulse disabled electronics within a 200-mile radius for 17 minutes. Unusual atmospheric phenomena were observed. Aurora-like lights, gravitational distortions, temporal irregularities. Most significant development. At the moment of detonation, ground-based telescopes and satellite surveillance detected structured objects in high Earth orbit, objects that had not been present 24 hours prior. The unidentified objects remained stationary for 72 hours before disappearing. Recovered debris analysis. The Sundial 3 device was not destroyed. It appears to have been retrieved and disassembled by unknown forces and removed from the site with surgical precision. Current status. The Sundial program has been retroactively classified at the highest clearance level. All personnel with knowledge of the project have been reassigned to isolated posts or granted early retirement under NDAs with criminal enforcement provisions. Dr. Ellis Warren's body was never recovered. Extensive search efforts in the Capitan Mountains yielded no physical remains or technical documents. Final note. Recent astronomical surveys have detected artificial structures in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Structures that were not present in prior data. Radio telescopes are now receiving structured, repeating signals from the direction of these objects. Signals transmitting every 72 hours. Someone is trying to communicate, and we may have just told them, we're finally ready to listen. Classified Addendum. Director's eyes only. Date, January 15th, 2027. Sir, you requested an investigation into the possibility of other Sundial-class devices awaiting activation. Following an extensive audit of restricted archives, I located references to several related operations dating back to the early 1950s. Operation Hourglass, 1952-56. Temporal detonation, prototypes, status, dismantled officially. Project Meridian, 1958-62. Astronomical trigger systems, status, unknown. Sundial 4 through Sundial 7, 1955-57. No deployment records found. But what concerns me most is this. I recovered Edward Teller's personal notes, found in a locked safe following his death in 2003. The final entry, dated September 30th, 1954, reads, Warren suspects we built only one device. Poor, naive Warren. How could we risk putting all our hopes into a single beacon? The others are sleeping, in their appointed places, waiting for their own cosmic wake-up calls. 2026 was only the beginning. The universe runs on a longer clock than human politics. If Teller's notes are accurate, then Sundial 3 was not unique. There may be dozens of similar installations, each one tied to its own astronomical event, each awaiting its moment to signal whoever or whatever responded in New Mexico. I have begun discrete searches based on cryptic location references found in Teller's writings. But the sensitivity of this information, coupled with the potential for mass panic, requires extreme discretion. The next major astronomical event matching sundial criteria occurs on August 12, 2045. A rare planetary alignment combined with solar maximum conditions. We have 19 years to locate the remaining devices, assuming, of course, that we want to find them. Director Collins Deep Projects Division. Final entry. Location unknown. Audio recording. Found in abandoned research facility. Date, March the 21st, 2027, clear audio. One voice. My name is Dr. Elena Vasquez, former nuclear physicist. Current, I suppose the term is researcher of inconvenient truths. If you're hearing this, it means you found the facility we were forced to abandon when our investigation into Project Sundial became a matter of national security. We spent 3 months analyzing data from the Capitan Mountain site. That crater? It wasn't created by a detonation. It was the result of extraction. Something was pulled from the Earth with surgical precision. The radiation patterns left behind don't match known nuclear signatures. They're structured, organized, almost like a language written in gamma rays. And here's what the government doesn't want you to know. Using Teller's hidden notes and Warren's equations, we found 17 more sites, all across the American Southwest. Each site emits the same seismic signature, pulses, every 72 hours, growing stronger as their activation dates approach. Next scheduled activation, August 12, 2045, Nevada Desert. Then, September 23, 2051, Colorado Rockies. Then, October 31, 2057, Arizona Highlands. These aren't bombs. They're not even weapons. They're invitations. And something out there has been waiting patiently for us to respond. Long pause. Shuffling of papers. I've documented everything. Proof that each sundial site is positioned on land with unique geological and electromagnetic properties. Their coordinates form a pattern, visible only from orbit. A pattern that matches no known human design, but corresponds exactly to star charts found in ancient civilizations. Most disturbing of all, we recovered Edward Teller's final recordings, hidden in a Los Alamos safety deposit box. He made them in 2003, weeks before his death. He was 95. They said he was senile, but his voice is sharp, clear, terrifying. They came to me in 1952, not in ships, not in lights. They came in dreams, in sudden insights, in equations that formed in my mind like whispers. They showed me how to build the bomb. They showed me how to build Sundial. They've been guiding us, nudging us forward, for centuries. The devices aren't ours. They belong to them. Each one is a relay, a way to expand their reach. When the stars align, they move through us. 2026 was not first contact, it was initiation. The real work begins when all 17 sundial devices activate. By then, they won't need to hide. By then, they'll have what they came for. Recording ends. Attached to it was an envelope, sealed since 1957. Inside, coordinates, Control 0, a master facility supposedly destroyed in an accident. Still operational, still buried beneath Mount Wilson, California. We tried to reach it. We got within 12 miles before our equipment failed. No signals, no GPS. Watches ran backward. Shadows moved in the wrong direction. The sun sped across the sky in fast-forward loops. We turned back, but we saw the entrance, a perfectly circular opening carved into the mountainside. Too precise to be natural, too ancient to be human. From within, a sound like breathing, like something vast, patient, waiting to exhale. Sound of footsteps. I'm leaving copies of our research hidden in this facility, sealed into the walls, buried in the foundation, secured in vaults that will survive whatever comes next. If you're listening to this, then you've found one of them. And now, you have a choice. You can dismiss this as madness. Call it fiction. Tell yourself that the countdowns are meaningless, that the signals are just noise, that the lights in the sky are weather balloons. Or you can accept the truth. We are not alone. We have never been alone. And everything we believe about the atomic age, the space race, and our so-called progress has been guided. We were given tools, and those who gave them to us are coming back to collect. End of recording. The tools we built were exactly what they needed, and now, device by device, they're coming to collect. The next activation is set for August 12th, 2045. That's 18 years from now. 18 years to prepare, to understand, to decide whether humanity will stand with them or against them when the final device awakens. But deep down, I suspect that choice was made long ago. Maybe in 1952, when they first whispered the secrets of nuclear fusion into Edward Teller's dreams. Maybe in 1947, when something crashed in the New Mexico desert, and the government suddenly became obsessed with exotic materials and unconventional propulsion systems. Maybe even earlier. Perhaps the decision was made in 1908, when something exploded over Tunguska with the force of 1,000 atomic bombs, decades before humans had even split their first atom. Recording quality begins to degrade. I hear helicopters approaching. Government, most likely, though at this point I'm no longer sure which government. The boundaries between human and non-human authority may be more blurred than any of us realized. If they take me, if I vanish the way Ellis Warren did, remember this: the truth doesn't die just because the truth-tellers are silenced. It waits, it hides, it buries itself deep, and emerges when the time is right. The sundial devices are still out there, still counting down, still broadcasting their patient signals to the stars. And something is still listening. Sound of rotors intensifies overhead. December 21st, 2026 was not the end. It was the beginning. Welcome to the future Edward Teller built. Welcome to the world where the sky finally answers back. Recording ends as helicopters arrive. He's only. Cosmic clearance required. Date, December 21st, 2027. Subject, 1-year report. Capitan Mountains Event Memorandum for the President. Sir, as requested, this is a comprehensive summary of all known information regarding the sundial program and its implications for national and global security. Current status: 16 additional sundial devices remain operational at classified locations. Each device continues broadcasting structured signals at precise intervals. Radio telescope arrays around the globe have detected responsive transmissions originating from multiple locations within the solar system. Anomalies: 3 independent research teams assigned to investigate sundial have disappeared under circumstances that defy conventional explanation. Recent development: on December 21st, 2027, exactly 1 year after the Capitan Mountains activation, every sundial device transmitted a synchronized signal. Duration: 17 minutes, 16 seconds. Detected by all major observatories. Decoding: impossible with existing cryptographic systems. Aftermath: within hours we began receiving structured communications from previously undetected objects in high Earth orbit. The messages are in perfect English, transmitted on secure frequencies typically reserved for our most sensitive intelligence-gathering satellites. Content of transmission: sample received December 21st, 2027, 21:16 GMT. Phase 1. Integration successful. Human technological development proceeding as modeled. Ready to begin. Phase 2 coordination. Recommend accelerated timeline for remaining activation sequences. Current socio-political conditions. Optimal for transition. Assessment. It is my professional judgment that the United States government, and indeed human government as a whole, may no longer be the primary authority directing events on this planet. The sundial program was never a weapons development project. It was an infrastructure deployment, executed by human hands, but designed by non-human intelligence. For over 70 years, we have been building a planetary-scale communication network for entities whose full nature and intentions remain unknown. Recommendation: Immediate formation of protocols for direct contact with non-human intelligence. Evidence strongly suggests that such contact is already underway, through channels outside the scope of elected leadership. Next sundial activation. 18 years from now, on August 12, 2045. By then, the distinction between human and non-human technological capability may no longer matter. We built the devices that summoned them. Now, we must decide if we can coexist with what answered. Respectfully, Director James Morrison, Department of Cosmic Defense, handwritten note on presidential letterhead, Jim, burn everything. Official policy, this never happened. Sundial. Weather balloon research. Case closed. Some truths are too dangerous for democracy. POTUS. Carving discovered in Capitan Mountains, New Mexico. Date, December 21st, 2054, 27th anniversary of first contact. If you're reading this, then the final device has activated, and you survived what came after. My name was Ellis Warren. I died in 1954. But death, it turns out, is not always permanent. They found me in the desert that October, just as I knew they would. But instead of erasing me, they gave me a choice. Join them willingly, or watch humanity stumble blindly toward a future they were building, with or without our consent. I chose to join them, not because I trusted them, but because someone had to be on the inside. Someone had to record what they really wanted. I spent 70 years learning who they are. They are not invaders. They are not conquerors. They are gardeners. Earth is not their first world. Humanity is not their first crop. Across the galaxy, they have guided the development of intelligent species, nudging them toward splitting atoms, building satellites, and reaching for the stars. All of it prepares us for a singular purpose, to become useful. Useful not for conquest, but for building, for constructing the networks, the gateways, the tools they require to move between stars. The sundial devices were merely the start. Every satellite we launched, every chip we fabricated, every quantum circuit we designed, all according to the blueprints they seeded into our brightest minds. All part of a machine we never even recognized. But now, you understand. Now in 2054, as their ships descend openly, you know what we truly built during our atomic age. We built the infrastructure for our own integration. Do not resist, not because they're invincible, but because resistance is meaningless. You cannot fight something you were always part of. You cannot rebel against your own origin. Instead, learn, work with them, and remember, even now, we still have a choice. A narrower one, yes, but still a choice. The universe is vast, ancient, and conscious. We are not its rulers, but we need not be its slaves. If we are wise, we may yet become its partners. Dr. Ellis Warren. 1923, 1954, to infinity. Final transmission. Broadcast on all frequencies. December 21st, 2055, 9:16 a.m., GMT 100 years after Project Sundial began. This is Mission Control. Not the one you know, but the one that has been guiding your species since the first time you looked up at the stars and asked, "Are we alone?" You were never alone. The integration is complete. All 17 sundial devices have fulfilled their purpose. The network is active. Communications span from Earth to the edge of the solar system and beyond. Humanity has passed its final test. Welcome to the galactic community. Your real education begins now. Your expertise is required for a matter of national importance. He spread a series of photographs across the metal table between us. Satellite imagery, clearly recent, judging by the unprecedented resolution quality. The images depicted the Tunguska region from above, but with strange geometric overlays and radiation measurements highlighted in red. "What exactly am I looking at, Colonel Volkov?" He replied, "Colonel Vulov, and what you're looking at is proof that the Tunguska event of 1908 was not what our scientists have claimed." The photograph revealed radiation patterns inconsistent with any meteor impact. Instead of a circular dispersion typical of such events, the gamma radiation was distributed in exact geometric formations, hexagons stretching for kilometers beneath the forest floor. "Our Cosmos satellites detected these anomalies 3 months ago," Vulov continued. 51 years after the explosion, the site is still active. I examined the images more closely. The radiation signatures pulsed at regular intervals, according to the timestamps. This suggested an artificial source. "Precisely," Vulov said, offering a smile devoid of warmth. "Which is why you're going to Tunguska, Dr. Morozov. Your cover will be a routine geological survey, mapping mineral deposits for the 5-year plan. Your real mission is to determine the source of these signals. And if I refuse, then you will be reassigned to study rocks in eastern Siberia, permanently, a far less comfortable arrangement than what I'm offering." The threat was clear. I accepted the assignment that afternoon. Now, as I sit in this makeshift camp, listening to the wind howl through trees that have remained bent and twisted for over half a century, I understand why previous expeditions never filed complete reports. The forest here feels wrong in ways that have little to do with the visible damage from the explosion. Entry 2, October 13, 1959. Audio quality, moderate. Electronic interference noted. The electromagnetic readings are unlike anything I've ever seen. I spent the day taking measurements across a grid, working systematically toward the site identified as the epicenter by Kulik's 1927 expedition. Every instrument I brought, magnetometer, Geiger counter, seismograph, detected patterns that defied the laws of physics. The magnetic field strength increased as we neared the center, but not in the gradual way expected from a buried metallic mass. Instead, it pulsed, every 3 seconds, with precise mathematical regularity. Pulse, pause, pulse, pause, like a heartbeat. My Geiger counter revealed something even more baffling. Background radiation, if this were a site of nuclear activity, should be evenly elevated. But here, it formed distinct geometric patterns in the soil. When mapped, the readings formed perfect hexagons, each approximately 50 meters wide, arranged in a honeycomb pattern extending far beyond my measurable range. Colonel Vulov has remained mostly silent during the trek. He carries no scientific instruments. Instead, his pack contains highly advanced radio equipment, far beyond what would be issued for a mere geological survey. He reports to Moscow twice daily, using codes I've never seen before. Local guides refused to accompany us beyond the outer tree line. They spoke of dancing lights beneath the ice, and a sound they described as iron screaming. When I asked for more details, the eldest simply said, "The sky fell there, but something else rose up." I dismissed it as folklore until last night. At precisely 0300 hours, I was awakened by a deep, rhythmic vibration that seemed to rise from the earth itself. It lasted exactly 3 minutes, then ceased. Vulov was already awake, standing at the camp's edge with his radio in hand. "Did you record that?" he asked. I hadn't. A serious lapse for someone trained in empirical observation. The sound had been so alien that my mind initially rejected it as real. "What was it?" I asked. Vulov's expression in the moonlight was unreadable. "The reason we're here, Doctor. This morning, I discovered several of my instruments had not simply malfunctioned, but had behaved in oddly specific ways. The magnetometer now points to magnetic north as being located directly beneath the blast epicenter, regardless of our actual position. The seismograph recorded rhythmic tremors every 3 seconds throughout the night. Perfect sine waves. Such regularity is impossible under stable geological conditions. Something is calling from beneath the permafrost. Entry 3, October 15, 1959. Audio quality. Poor, severe interference. We've reached the epicenter. Now, I understand why Kulik's expeditions found no crater. This wasn't an impact, it was an emergence. The blast zone stretches for kilometers in every direction. Trees flattened in a perfect radial pattern that has puzzled scientists for decades. But at the center, a perfect circle 100 meters across, the forest stands untouched. Ancient pines rise skyward, their bark scarred but intact, as though the explosion moved around them, not through them. The soil tells a story that no meteor impact ever has. My equipment picked up metallic fragments, but their composition is deeply unsettling. The isotopic ratios are not merely unusual, they are impossible, indicating the presence of elements not found in nature and structured in ways that suggest artificial design. This morning, while taking soil samples, my spade struck something hard beneath the permafrost. After an hour of excavation, I uncovered a black metallic shard, 15 centimeters long, smooth as glass, and so dark it seemed to absorb light completely. Staring at it strained my vision. Most disturbing of all, it emitted a faint, constant vibration, 3 hertz, the exact same frequency as the magnetic pulses. When I showed the fragment to Vulov, his reaction confirmed my worst suspicions. "Where exactly did you find this?" he demanded, snatching the object with gloved hands. "Approximately 2 meters down," I replied. "Right beneath. You will note its location precisely and excavate no further." He sealed the shard in a lead-lined container I hadn't even noticed in his gear. "Your orders are to survey and report, not to collect specimens. Colonel, this could be the key to understanding." "Dr. Morozov," he interrupted, his tone ice-cold. "The last scientist who asked too many questions about what we found here is now buried under 2 meters of ice. I trust you understand my meaning." The threat was so calmly delivered it took a moment to register. How many expeditions had been sent here? How many scientists vanished? Later that evening, while Vulov was busy with his radio transmissions, I returned to the site and conducted additional scans. The results were staggering. Ground-penetrating radar revealed a vast structure buried beneath the site. This was not a cluster of natural metal deposits. It was a symmetrical, engineered form. Hexagonal chambers connected by straight corridors, descending deep beneath the forest floor, far beyond the range of my equipment. Whatever lies beneath Tunguska is not natural. It is not human. And based on radiocarbon dating of surrounding soil samples, it has been here far longer than the explosion of 1908. That event didn't bring something here. It uncovered something that was already waiting. Entry 4, October 17, 1959. Audio quality moderate. Background humming present. I have accessed Colonel Vulov's classified files. I know this breach of protocol may cost me my life, but scientific curiosity has always been my weakness. While he conducted his evening radio check, I photographed several documents from his locked case. What I found has rewritten everything I thought I knew about this mission, and the Tunguska event itself. The files include correspondence dating back to 1908, including telegrams exchanged between American inventor Nikola Tesla and Arctic explorer Robert Peary. The telegrams describe Tesla's experiments with wireless energy transmission from his Wardenclyffe Tower on Long Island. According to the records, Tesla was testing a revolutionary new method for transmitting electricity through the Earth's atmosphere to any point on the globe. His intended target for a large-scale test? The Arctic region, where Peary was leading an expedition. One telegram, dated June 28, 1908, reads, R. Peary, final test scheduled 02:14 GMT, June 30th. Expect atmospheric disturbance, Arctic region. Exercise extreme caution. Energy dispersal may exceed calculations. N. Tesla. Peary's response, dated July 2nd. Tesla. Test successful beyond measure. Sky over Siberia lit like day. Effect visible from Greenland. Indigenous reports of ground shaking up to 1,000 miles from epicenter. Whatever you activated, it responded. Recommend immediate cessation of experiments. R. Peary. But the most unsettling document is a private journal entry from Tesla himself, apparently recovered and translated by the KGB. Through means I cannot explain, the transmission succeeded, but not in the way I had anticipated. We awakened something that was not meant to wake. The energy beam penetrated. Not just the atmosphere, but the ancient ice as well. What we had interpreted as a successful power transmission was, in reality, a response signal. We were not the first to wield such power, only the first to do so blindly. Tesla's Wardenclyffe facility was shut down and demolished just days after the Tunguska event. Official records blamed financial failure, but the classified Soviet documents tell a different story. Tesla himself wrote to a colleague, "Some discoveries are too dangerous for the world as it exists." The KGB files contain further evidence that Soviet authorities have known the truth about Tunguska for decades. Geological surveys conducted in the 1930s detected the same anomalous structures I've been mapping, but the research was immediately classified. The scientists involved were reassigned, or, as Colonel Vulov strongly implied, eliminated. According to the documents, at least 3 previous expeditions have been sent to investigate the Tunguska site since 1945. None submitted complete reports. 2 teams vanished entirely. The third, led by Dr. Yuri Petrov, was found frozen to death inside his tent. His final notes described hexagonal chambers that extended beyond measurable depth and mentioned a sound like the earth itself breathing. Our current expedition was authorized only after satellite images revealed increased activity in the area. The geometric radiation patterns I've been studying have been intensifying since 1957, indicating that whatever lies beneath the permafrost is becoming increasingly active. As I write, I can hear that deep, rhythmic vibration once more. It begins each night at exactly 0300 hours and continues for precisely 3 minutes. But tonight it's different, stronger, and I'm almost certain I can now detect patterns within the sound. Mathematical sequences. Intelligent design. Vulov has been watching me more closely since I questioned him about the metal fragment. I suspect he knows I accessed his files. If anything happens to me, I hope this journal survives, to tell the truth about what we discovered at Tunguska. The explosion in 1908 was not caused by a meteor, nor was it solely the result of Tesla's wireless energy experiment, though that may have been the trigger. No, the blast was the response, a reaction from something ancient that had been lying dormant beneath the ice for millennia. And now, we have awakened it. Entry 5, October 19th, 1959. Audio quality, excellent. All interference has ceased. The silence is worse than the sounds. For 3 days, electromagnetic interference plagued our instruments. Radio communication with Moscow was impossible. Our equipment registered readings far beyond calibrated limits. The deep rhythmic pulses from underground increased in both frequency and duration. Then, just before dawn this morning, everything stopped. The sudden absence of interference is more unsettling than the anomalies themselves. It suggests that whatever has been transmitting from below has completed its initial task. During the night, Vulov received new orders via emergency radio protocol. We are to begin excavation immediately. The machinery was airdropped to our location under cover of darkness, and it is far more advanced than anything needed for a simple geological survey. "We're going down," Vulov informed me, without preamble. "Moscow wants answers." "Colonel," I said cautiously, "we don't yet know the structural integrity of what lies below. If we damage it—" "Dr. Morozov," he cut in, "you are here to observe, not to advise on strategy. The decision has been made. The drilling began at 0800 hours. We penetrated the permafrost easily, but at a depth of 5 meters, the drill struck something that sent vibrations through the entire rig. It wasn't rock. It wasn't even metal, not as we know it. It rang like a bell when struck. By midday, we had exposed the upper surface of something entirely inexplicable. A massive structure made of hexagonal plates, each about 2 meters across. The segments were fitted together with seamless, impossible precision. The material is unlike anything I've encountered. Harder than steel, yet crystalline in nature. It seems more grown than manufactured. But the most disturbing part came when we cleared the ice from one of the exposed plates. The surface was not corroded or decayed. It shimmered as if newly made, and through it, patterns of light pulsed every 3 seconds, the same interval I've been recording for weeks. The structure is active, possibly even alive, though I hesitate to apply that term to something so clearly artificial. As we continued our work, my instruments began detecting new types of emissions. Electromagnetic pulses, but no longer random. They now followed deliberate sequences, prime numbers, Fibonacci series, harmonic intervals. "It's trying to talk to us," I told Vulov during a break. "No, Doctor," he replied. "It's talking to something else. We're just eavesdropping." That night, while reviewing the day's data, I made a discovery that shook me to my core. The patterns I've recorded match signals first detected by the Jodrell Bank Observatory in England, radio emissions dismissed by mainstream scientists as cosmic background noise. These signals have been observed intermittently since 1908, but they don't come from space. They originate here at Tunguska, and they've been transmitting outward for over 50 years. Entry 6, October 21st, 1959. Audio quality poor. Voice displays signs of extreme stress. We've broken through. After 2 days of excavation, we created an opening wide enough to lower equipment into the structure. The chamber beneath is vast. The walls curve away into darkness, extending far beyond the range of our lights. The air inside is warm, several degrees above freezing, despite the permafrost that surrounds it. It carries a metallic tang and a low electric charge that makes the hair on my arms stand on end. The walls are covered in the same hexagonal plating we observed at the surface. But here, the patterns of light are more intricate. Entire sections pulse in synchronized waves, rippled illuminations moving across the chamber like signals being routed through a machine. Against Vulov's orders, I descended using mountaineering gear. He wanted to wait for a special team from Moscow, but I couldn't. I had to know. What I found below is beyond anything I could have imagined. The chamber is not empty. It contains what I can only describe as machinery, though that word feels woefully inadequate. Geometric formations rise from the floor like crystalline trees. Their surfaces are covered with components that shift and realign on their own. These constructs are self-repairing, self-modifying. At the center of the chamber stands a pillar, roughly 3 meters tall, made of the same light-absorbing material as the earlier fragment, but this one is active. It pulses with light from within, and when I approached, I could feel its vibrations inside my bones, the familiar 3 Hz frequency. When I placed my hand on the pillar's surface, the chamber responded. Lights flared across the walls. The machines activated, and for one blinding instant, I felt something vast, intelligent, and ancient, something awakening from slumber. And I understood, if only briefly, what Tesla had done in 1908. His wireless energy transmission hadn't just traveled through the atmosphere. It had followed a path of least resistance, through the Earth's magnetic field, and struck this structure with the exact frequency needed to activate it. The Tunguska explosion wasn't caused by Tesla's beam. It was the result of this ancient machine powering on, venting the built-up energy by blasting upward through the rock and ice, obliterating the forest. When I returned to the surface, I found Vulov in a heated exchange over the radio. From what I could overhear, our discovery had caused considerable concern at the highest levels. "Yes, sir," he was saying. "It appears to be functional. No, sir, we do not yet understand its purpose." Then came the words that made my blood run cold. "What do you mean, similar structures?" Similar structures. The phrase struck like a thunderclap. How many of these installations are hidden beneath the earth? How long have they been there? That night, while I struggled to comprehend the implications of our discovery, the chamber beneath us began to transmit again. But this time, the message was different. The pulses had transformed, now forming structured modulated patterns, not simple beacons. The machine wasn't just awake, it was calling home. Entry 7, October 23, 1959. Audio quality. Good. Voice controlled but tense. They are coming for me. Colonel Vulov received orders this morning to terminate the expedition and return to Moscow immediately. But first he informed me all physical evidence must be secured and all personnel debriefed according to special protocols. I know what that means in KGB terminology. The equipment we brought to the site has been augmented with specialized gear that arrived with a new team during the night. These men wear no insignia and speak with accents I cannot place. They brought instruments I do not recognize and chemicals whose purposes I can only guess. "Dr. Morozov," Vulov said over breakfast, "your valuable contribution to this expedition will be properly acknowledged in the final report. However, the sensitive nature of our discoveries requires certain security measures." "What kind of security measures?" I asked. "The kind that ensure state secrets remain secret. I have hidden this journal and my personal recordings in a cache approximately 1 kilometer northeast of our primary camp. If I do not survive to retrieve them, perhaps someone else will find them and understand what we discovered here. Before they seal me away from the world, I want to record what I believe happened at Tunguska. Based on all observations and data, the structure beneath us is not of human origin. The materials, the construction techniques, the technology, it all points to a civilization far more advanced than ours. Geological analysis of the surrounding rock suggests the installation has been buried for at least 10,000 years, possibly far longer. The machinery in the chamber appears to be part of a vast communication array designed to transmit and receive signals across astronomical distances. The electromagnetic pulses I've been tracking are not random. They are a beacon, announcing Earth's location to any who might be listening. Tesla's 1908 experiment inadvertently reactivated the beacon after millennia of dormancy. The massive explosion that followed was not the result of human technology. It was this ancient machine roaring back to life, like a dormant generator suddenly powered on. But the most terrifying aspect of this discovery is what it implies about our planet's history. If one such installation exists here in Siberia, how many more lie hidden beneath the surface of the Earth? Who built them, and why? I fear we are not alone in the universe. Worse, I fear we never have been. The signals from Tunguska have grown more complex since we began digging. What began as mathematical progressions has evolved into full exchanges, questions, replies, confirmations. Something out there is answering. Last night I saw lights in the sky unlike anything known to natural science. They moved with precision, forming geometric shapes that pulsed in synchrony with the signals from below. They hovered over our camp for nearly an hour before vanishing into the clouds. Vulov pretended not to notice, but I watched him spend the rest of the night in constant radio contact with Moscow. This morning, he told me the mission was complete. Complete, I said. We've only begun to understand. We've confirmed the presence of anomalous structures, he interrupted, and documented their basic characteristics. That was the objective. No, I said. We've discovered something that could redefine human history. We can't just walk away. Vulov's face showed no emotion. Dr. Morozov, there are forces at work here beyond your scientific curiosity. This site is now under permanent monitoring. Your role is finished. And if I refuse to stay silent, then you will join the other scientists who asked too many questions. The threat was plain. I understood. I had a choice between silence and death, but I refused to let this discovery be buried. Entry 8, October 24th, 1959. Final entry. Audio quality, whispered. Recorded in secret. They think I'm asleep. The debriefing began this afternoon, with injections they claimed were vaccinations against Arctic disease. But I recognized the effects. Memory suppression agents, designed to blur recollection and prevent reliable testimony. Fortunately, my experience in Antarctica taught me techniques for resisting such effects. I forced myself to vomit before the drugs could fully take hold, all while pretending to comply. While they believe I'm unconscious, I have retrieved my hidden cache and recorded this final entry. In a few hours, they will transport me to Moscow for extended debriefing. I will not survive that process. But before they silence me, I must document what I now understand. The installation is not just a beacon. It is part of a global network. During my last descent into the chamber, I found new passageways leading deeper. They hinted at a larger system. Interconnected structures spanning continents, linked via underground transmission lines that follow the planet's magnetic fields. Whoever constructed this network was not native to Earth. The underlying mathematics behind its design suggest an origin in a different stellar environment. They came here, built this system, and then vanished, but left their machines behind, dormant but intact, waiting for a signal. Tesla sent that signal in 1908, unintentionally. His energy transmission rode the Earth's magnetic field straight to the Tunguska device, waking it from eons of slumber. Now, the beacon is active again, and something has heard it. The lights I saw above the forest are not weather or cosmic events. They are reconnaissance. Preparation. The electromagnetic conversations I've recorded are not idle chatter. They include coordinates, timetables, what appear to be invasion protocols. We've woken something ancient, and we are utterly unprepared. I hear them now, approaching my tent. Voices, boots on snow, speaking in languages I do not recognize. They've discovered my absence. If you find this recording, if it survives and you understand what I've documented, remember this. The explosion in 1908 was not the end. It was the beginning. The door is opening, and we are not ready for what waits on the other side. Do not dig further. It listens, it remembers, and now it knows where we are. Recording ends. Electromagnetic interference resumes. New narrative. Bohemian Grove, California Recovered Journal. Entry. Classification, redacted subject. Eli Granger, independent journalist, date range, July 15th to 18th, 2023. Location, Bohemian Grove, Monte Rio, California. The following file was recovered from an encrypted server in Iceland. Eli Granger's current whereabouts are unknown. My name is Eli Granger, and I'm writing this because I may not live long enough to tell the story in person. What I witnessed in the redwoods of Northern California will haunt me until my last breath, whenever that may be. It all began 3 weeks ago, with an email that shouldn't have existed. Where whistleblowers sometimes emerge, my secure inbox pinged with a message from an address composed only of numbers and letters, routed through 7 separate proxy servers. No subject line, just an attachment and 4 lines of text. You want truth? Go to the redwoods, bring a black suit and a quiet soul. July 15th to 18th. The fire reveals all. The attachment was a high-resolution scan of what looked like a guest registry for Bohemian Grove, the all-male retreat where the world's most powerful men allegedly gather each summer to commune with nature. I'd written about the Grove before, using second-hand sources and grainy leaked photos from the 1980s. But this was different. The names on the list made my blood run cold. Former presidents, sitting senators, military contractors I'd investigated for years, CEOs of tech giants, executives from pharmaceutical empires, defense conglomerates, media moguls, every person capable of shaping entire nations' narratives. All were scheduled to attend something titled Midsummer Encampment. At the bottom of the document was a forged access pass with my photo, an image I'd never sent to anyone, digitally altered to show me in a black suit and tie. The name, Edmund Gray, logistics consultant, Prometheus Industries. Someone with serious resources wanted me inside the Grove. The question was, why? I should have walked away. I should have deleted the email and returned to safe stories. Municipal corruption, corporate fraud, tax loopholes. The kind of stories that don't get journalists killed. Instead, I packed a black suit and drove north to Sonoma County. The road to Monte Rio winds through some of California's most breathtaking terrain. Towering redwoods cast deep shadows over narrow roads. Even at midday, the canopy makes it feel like dusk. It's the kind of place you expect to find hippie communes, not clandestine power gatherings. But I learned during my Navy intelligence days, the most dangerous secrets often hide in the most peaceful places. I parked in Guerneville and walked the perimeter of the Bohemian Grove property that evening. 2,000 acres of private forest, wrapped in chain-link fencing and topped with razor wire. Security cameras every 50 feet, motion sensors embedded in trees. It looked more like a military base than a summer camp for elite men. The front gate was guarded by men who looked ex-special forces, black tactical gear, weapons just out of sight, eyes that had seen combat, and wouldn't blink at more. Whatever was happening inside those woods, they were serious about keeping it hidden. The forged pass worked. Too well. The guard scanned the barcode, matched my face to the photo, and waved me through without hesitation. Either the forgery was flawless, or someone powerful had paved the way. Neither possibility brought comfort. Inside, the Grove matched every leaked account. Gravel paths wound among rustic cabins and open-air lodges nestled between redwoods so old they predated civilization. Each cabin bore a whimsical name: Owl's Nest, Dragon's Den, Caveman's Lodge. Charming, in another context. Here, the charm felt performative. A mask stretched thin over something far more unsettling. The other attendees weren't just rich. They moved like men accustomed to shaping history. Polo shirts, boat shoes, easy laughter, and conversations that exposed the scope of their control. The Shanghai index will drop exactly 17%. Tell the Secretary Operation Nightfall is greenlit for October. Media blackout should hold for 72 hours. I posed as a logistics consultant, clipboard in hand. Phones were confiscated at the gate, replaced with company-issued devices, sanitized and network isolated. My cover worked well enough. Rich men don't look closely at the help. But soon I noticed the symbols. Owls. Everywhere. Etched into wood, carved into stone, painted onto lanterns. Not whimsical owls, stylized, angular, with eyes that followed you. The largest stood 40 feet tall, a stone colossus on an island in a man-made lake at the grove's heart. Even in daylight, it radiated something ancient, something hungry. Beautiful, isn't it? I turned. An older man stood beside me. Silver hair, an expensive tan, Palm Beach polish. His eyes were the palest blue I've ever seen. The owl of Bohemia, he said, joining me at the water's edge. Been watching this place over a century. Some say it's just decoration. Others know better. Know better how? I asked, instinctively, stupidly. He smiled. Too many teeth, too white, too perfect. You'll see tonight, Mr. Gray. The cremation of care waits for no man, not even consultants. Then he walked off, leaving me staring at the statue, a pit forming in my stomach. That evening, the atmosphere changed. Gone was the daytime levity. As twilight deepened, men emerged from cabins in dark robes, hoods pulled low. Some carried torches. Others held objects I couldn't identify, ritualistic tools from cultures long dead. A robe waited for me in my cabin. With it, a note. Attendance is mandatory. Silence is sacred. The owl sees all. As darkness fell, hundreds of robed figures processed through the trees, converging on the lake. Torches flickered like infernal fireflies. The only sounds were footfalls and fabric brushing bark. I stayed near the back, hood up. The robes smelled of incense, and something else, something metallic, organic, faintly rotten. We gathered in a natural amphitheater. The stone owl loomed above us, eyes glowing red in the torchlight. At the lake's edge floated a wooden boat. In it, an effigy wrapped in white cloth. Small, child-sized, uncomfortably lifelike. At first, I thought it was a dummy. Straw, perhaps, but the way the cloth clung to the form, the way it rested in the boat, it felt too real. A robed figure climbed a platform beside the statue. Though his face was hidden, his posture, cadence, and voice betrayed a man who'd once addressed the nation nightly, a former president. "Brothers of the Grove," his voice boomed, amplified by hidden speakers, "we gather once again beneath the ancient eyes of wisdom to perform the sacred rite that frees us from the burdens of conscience." The crowd responded in unison. "We banish care and cast it to the flames. Care, that pale, clinging thing that binds the hands of power. Care that whispers doubt in the ears of decision. Care that stays the sword of necessary action. We banish care and cast it to the flames." The ritual lasted nearly an hour. Names of ancient gods echoed through the forest. Moloch, the Carthaginian deity of fire. Enlil, Mesopotamian lord of storms. Names no modern leader should utter. But it wasn't the occult symbolism that disturbed me. It was how ordinary it all felt to them. These titans of power, These supposed champions of democracy, chanting paeans to cruelty and detachment, like men ordering drinks at a country club. The ceremony's climax came when the boat was pushed onto the lake. Flames erupted from the water, hidden jets, no doubt, but the effect was chilling. The effigy burned quickly. The white cloth curled away, revealing something. I can't say what. The firelight was blinding. Smoke obscured detail. But whatever lay beneath that cloth moved, too fluidly, too naturally. The cries, brief, high-pitched, quickly silenced, could have been tricks of combustion, but the weeping from some of the robed men and the cheers from others, that was no theater. As the flames died, the crowd dispersed. I turned to leave, but a hand fell on my shoulder. Mr. Gray. It was the old man, still in his ceremonial robe, eyes like ice. You're invited to the inner circle gathering. A rare honor for a consultant. Before I could respond, 2 more robed figures flanked me, not threatening, but not giving me a choice either. But their presence made it clear, refusing was not an option. They led me deeper into the forest, away from the main paths to a clearing I hadn't seen during my earlier recon. Here, perhaps 30 men stood in a circle around a fire pit carved directly into the bedrock. Unlike the theatrical grandeur of the earlier ritual, this felt ancient and deadly serious. The inner circle ritual began at midnight. The participants had removed their robes and donned masks made of polished bone. Owl faces with hollow sockets that seemed to look straight through you. Their movements were deliberate, synchronized, betraying a rehearsed familiarity that suggested this ceremony had taken place countless times before. The man who led the earlier gathering stepped into the center. Without his presidential posture and familiar voice, he seemed smaller, just another acolyte serving forces far older than any government. Brothers of the inner grove, he intoned, we are gathered to receive wisdom from the ancient ones and to consecrate the plans that will shape the destiny of the world. The response came in a language I didn't recognize at first. Harsh consonants, guttural syllables that bypassed logic and burrowed into something primal and terrified deep inside the human psyche. But then my Navy intelligence training kicked in. It was Adian, an ancient Mesopotamian dialect presumed extinct for over 2,000 years. They were chanting names of forgotten gods and vowing to offer them sacrifices, not of animals, but of nations. Symbols were drawn in ash around the fire, not random occult markings, but precise sigils I'd seen referenced in declassified CIA files. Project MK-Ultra had once experimented with ritualistic programming, using ancient languages and symbols to bypass rational resistance in the human brain. Officially, that research ended in the 1970s. Clearly, it had only become more exclusive. The ritual continued for hours. Maps were laid out, not geopolitical but economic. Zones of influence, resource caches, demographic clusters. Discussions shifted between English and Adian, but the meaning was clear. Wars to be ignited, governments to be destabilized, populations to be molded. What chilled me most was the perspective with which they spoke. Not as American leaders, or even as men, but as servants to ancient forces, preparing Earth for something beyond comprehension. The harvest nears, said one masked figure. The sleepers must be awakened, the old seals broken, in the names of those who wait beneath. The circle replied in unison, let the work continue. Hidden just beyond the firelight, I crouched low, recording everything with a digital audio device sewn into my shoe. But as the hours passed, a deeper realization settled over me. This wasn't corruption. This wasn't conspiracy. These men believed, truly believed, They were working for non-human masters. Whether those entities were real or imagined no longer mattered. Their decisions, shaped by that belief, would impact millions. The ritual concluded with each member drinking from a silver chalice. The liquid inside looked black in the firelight. Some men convulsed briefly after swallowing, eyes rolling back to whites only. When dawn approached, the masks came off, and the faces beneath were the same ones that appeared on world stages. Ex-presidents, sitting senators, generals, corporate moguls. They shook hands and exchanged soft-spoken farewells, like businessmen wrapping up a quarterly review, which, in a way, they were. I returned to my cabin just as light filtered through the redwood canopy, but I knew I couldn't remain much longer. Whatever protection my forged identity had granted was crumbling. Too many sideways glances, too many knowing smirks. They were toying with me, letting me witness just enough to grasp the immensity of the game. But there was still one place I had to see before escaping. The lodge marked Styx. I'd seen it during my first survey of the grounds. It sat apart from the main cluster of buildings, accessible only by a hidden road not shown on guest maps. The lodge itself was plain, wooden, designed to blend with the forest, but its security told a different story. Biometric scanners, electromagnetic locks, motion sensors capable of detecting a heartbeat from 50 feet away. Fortunately, my anonymous benefactor had planned for this. Hidden in the lining of my jacket was a device disguised as an ordinary USB stick. Inside it, advanced intrusion software crafted by someone with elite capabilities. When I plugged it into the security interface, the system blinked. Then it gave me temporary clearance, cutting the sensors and bypassing all locks. Whoever had engineered my entry into this place wanted me to see what lay below. Inside, the lodge was a shell. Behind a false wall, accessed through a pressure-sensitive panel, was a staircase. It descended far below the building into the bedrock. This passage wasn't modern. The stone was ancient, worn smooth by time. Electric fixtures had been retrofitted into sconces that predated the light bulb. At the base of the stairs stood a thick oak door. Beyond it, a chamber unlike anything I'd seen in my life. It was massive, far larger than the footprint of the lodge above would allow. Stone shelves lined the walls, filled with leather-bound journals, ancient scrolls, and artifacts spanning countless eras. In the center stood a single table carved from one solid piece of black stone. Maps, blueprints, and government documents, some bearing official seals, covered its surface. I started with the journals. I pulled one at random from a shelf labeled 1923, 1945. The handwriting was graceful, but the content was monstrous. The European situation proceeds as intended. Our associates in Berlin believed they served the fatherland. In truth, they served the ancient ones. The sacrifice of lesser peoples will fuel the next phase of the great work. Another, more recent. Operation Mockingbird exceeds expectations. Media outlets follow narrative cues without question. They believe they serve objectivity. They serve control. It was chilling. The central document shattered any remaining illusions. I found blueprints for the USA Patriot Act, dated 6 months before September 11th. Military plans for the Iraq invasion, complete with fabricated intel on weapons of mass destruction. Prototype social media algorithms, not designed to connect but to polarize. Pandemic response models, not built for health but control. Digital currency systems crafted to erase financial privacy. Population reduction strategies, cloaked as environmental reform, and most terrifying of all, a roster of attendees. It stretched back to the 1870s, when the Bohemian Club was founded, names from textbooks, industrial titans of the Gilded Age, but also names that shouldn't have been there, people from far earlier, names whose existence stretched beyond plausible lifespans. Either the records were wildly inaccurate, or some of these participants weren't entirely human. At the bottom of the most recent page was a handwritten note, still fresh. E. Granger, journalist, witnessed Inner Circle ceremony. July 16th, 2023. Asset or liability. Recommend termination if no compliance by dawn, July 18th. They knew exactly who I was from the moment I walked through their gates. The anonymous email, the forged credentials, the conveniently working access codes, none of it was coincidence. It had all been a test, and I was failing. A soft chime broke the silence. A motion sensor in the chamber had triggered. Red warning lights flickered to life along the stone walls, and in the distance I heard the heavy thud of boots descending the stairs. I grabbed as many documents as I could, stuffing them into my jacket, searching frantically for another exit. But there was only one way out, and it was about to be filled with people who would not hesitate to silence me. The footsteps grew louder. Voices echoed down the stairwell, clipped, controlled, military precision, tactical commands. Then, suddenly, darkness. The lights failed for a split second, and when the emergency lighting activated, casting everything in a hellish red glow, I heard a voice that bypassed sound entirely. It spoke directly into my mind. "Run, little journalist. Run and tell the world what you've seen. But know this, the telling will be your doom, and the salvation of your world will demand far greater sacrifices than the life of one man." When the red light stabilized, a section of the stone wall slid silently open, revealing a narrow tunnel carved into the rock, leading deeper underground. I didn't hesitate. Whatever had spoken, whether one of the ancient ones or something else, it was offering me a chance to escape. I took it. The tunnels beneath the grove stretched far and deep. Clearly ancient, they connected natural caves to artificially carved passages, forming a labyrinth that must have extended for miles. The walls were marked with symbols, familiar from the Inner Circle ritual, but these were older, worn smooth by time. I followed the main corridor for what felt like hours, guided only by patches of faintly glowing moss that lit the way just enough to avoid the worst hazards. Behind me, I could still hear pursuit. Occasional voices, distant flashlight beams, static from radio devices. But the further I traveled, the fainter those sounds became. Either they'd lost my trail, or they feared to follow me into these depths. Eventually, the ground began to rise. The air shifted, warmer, carrying the scent of wet leaves and distant rain. At last, I found an opening concealed by a curtain of vines, leading back into the forest, several miles from the grove. I emerged beneath a sky darkened with storm clouds. Thunder rolled above as the first raindrops began to fall. It was perfect cover, if I could make it back to my rental car before the security perimeter expanded. But I wasn't alone. Figures moved through the trees. Not the tactical team I expected, but something stranger. They wore the bone-white owl masks from the ritual, but their movements were unnatural, too fluid, too silent. And their eyes, they glowed, not with reflected light, but with their own faint bioluminescence. "The journalist sees too much," one of them said, his voice somehow cutting through the thunder. "The ancient ones are displeased," another answered. "But the pact must be honored. He was brought for a purpose. Let him carry the message to the outer world. Let them know what awaits." I ran. Behind me, the sound of inhuman laughter echoed, Not pursuit, but something worse. The laughter of hunters who know their prey cannot escape forever. I reached my car just as the storm broke in full. Rain hammered the windshield as I drove through the night, avoiding highways, sticking to back roads. In my jacket pocket, the stolen documents felt like they were on fire, but I had made it out. I had proof. I uploaded everything to an offshore server farm in Iceland. Documents, audio recordings, photographs, detailed notes. Then distributed backups through anonymous networks, encrypted with military-grade protocols. Within 6 hours, every file had been corrupted or erased. When I returned home, my apartment had been ransacked. Nothing valuable missing. But every electronic device, laptop, phone, camera, backup drives, was gone, systematically removed. The mainstream press ignored my story. Alternative outlets that initially expressed interest went dark within hours. Forum threads vanished seconds after being posted. It was as if the internet itself had been scrubbed clean of any reference to what I had found. But the worst part wasn't the censorship. It was the dreams. Since my escape, I have been haunted nightly by visions of the Ancient Ones, vast, tentacled beings that exist between dimensions, feeding on suffering and preparing to remake reality according to their will. They show me glimpses of what's to come. Cities submerged beneath black oceans. Skies filled with screaming winds. Populations reduced to livestock, serving masters they cannot comprehend. And they whisper that I am not a hero, not even a victim. I am their messenger. They chose me to see, to understand, to carry their truth into the world, not to warn it, but to prepare it. Warnings imply hope, resistance, but despair. Despair makes conquest easier. Every word I write, every conversation I have, every attempt to expose the truth, they want that. It spreads the rot, it breaks the will. I'm writing this final entry from a motel room in Reno. I've been on the road for 3 days, never staying in one place for more than a few hours. But I know it doesn't matter. They're not hunting me. They don't need to. I am already fulfilling their purpose, just by remembering, just by surviving. The cremation of care was not merely a ritual, it was an initiation. And I was not an infiltrator. I was a recruit. Tonight, I'll head east, into the desert. Maybe I'll find a way to sever the connection. Maybe I'll find a place quiet enough to vanish completely. Or maybe I'll just disappear and let the truth die with me. But if you're reading this, if these words have somehow survived the filters, the deletions, the firewalls, then remember, they call it the cremation of care. But what they really burn is conscience. And when that fire goes out, the world grows colder, darker, more ready, because the fire never really dies. It only spreads, silent, unseen, and unstoppable. And in the shadows it leaves behind, something ancient waits to be born.